Newsline Live, I'm Shweta Kothari. Here are the top stories we're tracking at this hour. India's benchmark indices ended the day in green, with Sensex closing above 83,000 mark and Nifty ending above 25,400. Top gainers in today's trading session included Bharti Airtel, NTPC, M&M and Titan. The mid-cap index underperformed, dropping by 79 points, with Suzlon and Biocon among the biggest losers in the mid-cap segment. Ola Electric Mobility shares price jumped as much as 10% to hit the upper circuit in today's trade, riding bullish on calls from major global brokerages. Bank of America and Goldman Sachs initiated coverage on Ola Electric stock with buy calls on the positive growth outlook. Reliance Jio users have been reportedly facing network connectivity issues in the last few hours. Several people posted on X, formerly Twitter, that they were not receiving signals on their mobile devices, with some claiming that they were unable to access internet using mobile data. Civil aviation regulator today suspended pilots involved in a tail strike incident at Delhi's airport on 9th of September. Indigo's flight 6C6054 from Delhi to Bengaluru had a major tail strike incident, and the aircraft has been grounded for the past 8 days. Air India announced a significant $400 billion refurbishment program to modernize 67 of its older aircraft as a part of its ambitious plan to transform into a world-class airline. The program will commence the overhaul of 27 narrow-body Airbus A320 neo planes, followed by 40 wide-body Boeing aircraft. Bajaj Auto introduces 2 new models as a part of its collaboration with Triumph, the Triumph Speed T4 and the MY25 Speed 400. Deliveries for both motorcycles is set to begin later this month, targeting the growing market for modern classic roadsters in India. The protest by Samsung employees at the home appliance plant near Chennai has entered its 9th day today. The workers are demanding higher wages and improved working conditions. Hundreds of employees are in strikes, dressed in their company uniforms, continue to stage a sit-in protest outside the plant. And India's wholesale price index WPI-based inflation cooled to a 4-month low of 1.31% in August, down from 2.04% in July, mainly due to a reduction in prices of manufactured products and food items. India's merchandise trade deficit widened to $29.7 billion in August from $23.6 billion in the previous month, as per data released by Ministry of Commerce today, while exports rose to $34.7 billion in August from $33.89 billion. Imports increased to $62.6 billion from $57.5 billion in July. Good evening. You're watching In Your Interest. I am Shweta Kothari. As the Modi 3.0 government marks its first 100 days in office today, the day also coincides with Prime Minister Modi's 74th birthday on 17th of September, that is today. India has experienced significant changes under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, with key advancements in national security, infrastructure and the welfare economics. After securing a third-term mandate, the BJP continues to push forward its own development agenda. Home Minister Amit Shah today highlighted the achievements of the Modi government's first 100 days since taking over for the third consecutive term. Now, the first 100 days of the Modi government's third term have been marked by a focus on infrastructure, major rail and metro expansion projects, including the phase 3 of the Bengaluru-Pune metro, which were also approved. The Modi government has also made key strides in agriculture. The government has also increased the minimum support price for kharif crops while launching Digital Agriculture Mission and the Agri-Shore Fund to support rural enterprises. In employment, a 2 lakh crore package was introduced in the last 100 days to benefit 41 million youth over 5 years, focusing on skill development in particular. Additionally, women entrepreneurs also saw a boost, with number of Lakpati Didis earning over 1 lakh annually, growing to more than 1 crore. The government extended the Ayushman Bharat scheme to those aged over 70 years. Now, these initiatives are expected to enhance access to healthcare as well as reduce dependence on foreign medical education. Prime Minister's larger vision of Amrit Kal, which seeks to turn India into a developed nation by 2047, means that there are various initiatives which are and have been launched in the last 100 days. What are the strides made so far? And to get a status check on where the economy stands, joining us on the show is a very special guest, Dr. Arvind Virwani, member NITI Aayog. Sir, thank you very much for taking time out. I think it's only right to begin with the first question stemming from the economic reforms that have defined the Modi era in the Indian economy in the past 10 years, from GST to IBC, from Jam Trinity to UPI. How do you see India changing over the last 10 years?
So when we talk about economic reforms, there is both the kind of direct effect, or call it physical or direct, it can be called different things, and the intangible or mindset change. We have this long legacy of what I call bureaucratic socialism, which has changed the mindset of people in a very negative sort of direction. So reforms are important, not just in terms of all the things you mentioned, like IBC, JAM. Of course they are very important. I mean, I can speak on each of these, particularly IBC and GST, which I have been personally talking about and being involved in directly or indirectly for many decades. But it is also the mindset change, and the big mindset change is, I think, for the first time the public, particularly the youth, the young people, are being told that entrepreneurship is good, startups, innovation, that it is not just the preserve of big industry, that you can have social entrepreneurship. You can have, you can be in a village or a panchayat and have a little idea which can transform the locality. So this kind of that entrepreneurship, business in that sense is not a bad thing. It is not big, bad, large businessmen. Everybody, in their own little way can be an entrepreneur. So I think that reorientation of mindset is in some ways will be longer lasting and have bigger effects after a lag. Of course, mindset changes have a long time, take a long time and become effective. But of course, we see the effects of the direct changes. IBC, for example, is making entrepreneurs now more conscientious. So when we talk about market reforms, the whole idea is to change the incentive structure. I think that's a very difficult concept for the common person to understand, that the IBC is not just about resolving bankrupt companies. It is also about giving a signal to businesses that you cannot just extract money from it and run it down and then expect nothing to happen. There will be bankruptcy. These things will be taken away from you, and that changes the mindset of the business. Okay, so it is both these things. It is the direct effect and the mindset change, or the incentives which have a actually more powerful effect on productivity and future growth.
All right, now that is as far as reforms is concerned, but we've seen a special thrust on infrastructure development, which has been one of the core drivers of India's GDP now for some time. Is it also time, do you think, for consumption story to pick up? Has it really picked up?
Yeah. So I was asked the same question about a year ago, perhaps by one of your correspondents himself. So what I said was that the pandemic had a very strong effects on many things, and one of them was on savings and consumption. So the whole structure was disrupted, and that led to first declined savings then declined consumption, and I expected it to recover after the pandemic, but then we got the El Nino. So I was very clear last year, because I have seen many, the way I compared it, being an old man who has seen many of these things before, was I compared it to a double drought. In the old days we didn't have pandemic, but we used to have 2 successive droughts. So the effect of an El Nino coming on top of the pandemic was to reduce consumption in the rural areas, those who were dependent on the agriculture and the rural economy. So I expected that to recover. That's exactly what's happening now. So I look forward to this continued recovery of consumption going forward, presuming always that there is not another big drought.
And, we've seen some of that recovery as far as GDP growth in financial year 2024 is concerned. But there is also a prediction here, an estimation that the Indian economy will grow in financial year 25 at 7%. Now, do you think it's on track, given the first, quarter GDP numbers have been underwhelming? Do you think we need to relook at the target, or 7% growth in financial year 25 still makes sense?
See, I have done growth forecast for probably longer than many people who are listening to your broadcast have been alive. So for that reason, 2 things you must remember. There's a difference between the kind of forecast you need for the stock market and for policy. So I am talking purely from a policy perspective. And so actually I don't even do quarterly forecasts, because they are not relevant for policy. Why? Because they are continuous shocks. So to answer your question more directly, I am absolutely confident that our growth rate will be 7%. These fluctuations happen every year, believe me. I have done this for many decades. So what I do is I always make a plus minus. So my forecast right from the beginning of the year is 7% plus minus 0.5. Because there will be shocks, there will be inevitably something will happen, something will take it up, something will take it down. For example, just to mention one of the things which has clearly happened already, which is that the oil price is declining. That has a very positive effect on the economy. So these things, but I would not overemphasize it, because next month or the month after that there may be something negative, but I am confident of my growth forecast of 7% plus minus 0.5%.
Okay, let's now talk about per capita GDP. Now, it is expected that India will become an upper middle income nation by 2030s, considering that there is a projection here of an average growth of 5.9%. Well, those are your estimates. A high income nation by 2050. So that is the expectation here. The truth is, India's per capita income today is just over $2,400. Are we on track to meet that estimation, given that per capita GDP will grow by about 5.8 to 5.9%?
So now that we are talking about the medium long term, let me tell you the forecast first before we start discussing it. So in my projections, I expect India to, in the next 3 years, in size, in GDP terms, to overtake Japan and Germany in the next 3 years. And in the 5 years time or so, to become an upper middle income country. But you have to be very careful. How do I define an upper middle income country? And I'll explain that very briefly. So an upper middle income country in about 5 years by 2030, and then a high income country around 2050. Now what do I mean by those terms is very important. What I do is I take the per capita GDP of a country which has just gone from being lower middle income to upper middle income, which is Indonesia in 2019, and Romania, which went from upper middle income to high income also in 2019, and I apply that to per capita GDP in PPP terms in the latest estimates numbers which have come for 2021 onwards at constant prices. So that is my benchmark. And that is the level I expect to happen.
All right, let's go back to something we started with, and that is some of the reforms that the present government has brought about. One of them, of course, is GST. Now, the complexity around GST has often been discussed of late in an MSME meetings with Finance Minister, which put her in a sort of uncomfortable situation. Do you think it's time now to simplify GST?
So, two points here. One, of course, we must remember that there's a GST Council which will decide these things. Now, in the GST Council, there is the central government and 28 states are represented. So, this council has to decide what to do. The second point I would make is that in 2022, there is an EGRO paper, which I happen to be one of the co-authors, which did a comprehensive analysis of the GST, both in terms of complexity, in terms of simplification, in terms of reform, in terms of impact on the distribution, everything. So, one of the things which comes out is that people don't pay attention to the cesses. The cesses are very complex. There are more cesses, if I remember correctly, around a dozen cesses. The rates are only 5 or 6, but cesses rates are a dozen. So, when we talk about simplification, we must remember it's not just the rate structure, but also the structure of cesses. So, one of the things we recommended in that is that if you are going to keep the cess, which I don't recommend abolishing at this point, but you must restrict it to only 3 items: cigarettes and all the related tobacco stuff, automobiles, and harmful health chemicals like health product, bad health like that pan thing people chew. So, everything else should be removed. Why? Because it will simplify, it will remove all these different numbers. So, bottom line, yes, I think rate structure was cobbled together because it had to be approved by every state. But the difficulty, as I mentioned to you, is it's the same 28 states who created a kind of complex structure which have to agree. So, I would appeal to all the media and all experts to push the states to simplify. Unfortunately, people think that only in Delhi we have to push the central government. That's not true. 28 states have to agree. And yes, simplification is necessary. Let us all jointly persuade the states to simplify it.
All right, so it does look like tax structures is not such a big problem. It is the cesses that is a problem. But moving on to a very significant issue that's been a pain on the back of this government, and that is the unemployment. Now, unemployment data, and you take various figures which differ in their numbers, still continues to be a major problem. It continues to be one of those poll issues that is discussed years after years. That and labor reforms have been pending for years. What is the best way to address the situation, sir?
So, the first thing which one has to do is separate out the short-term fluctuations arising from the pandemic. Again, unfortunately, people don't, and that short-term impacts of the pandemic from the long-term trends. Now, short-term, you must remember the pandemic disrupted everything. We've already talked about disruption of savings and consumption, employment, everything. So, when people have these surveys, somebody will have done a survey in one state, somebody will have surveyed some other. I am not saying that those things are wrong. I am just saying that they pick up things, a kind of reality which was there because of the pandemic. So, what I look at is what is the trend. So, how can I do that? What is the trend? Okay. So, PLFS which started in 2017-18 and we have up to 2022-3, you can look at the labor force participation rate, unemployment rate, but I won't go into that. The key variable to look at is what is called the worker population ratio. This worker population ratio, if you plot on a graph, it is clearly on an uptrend. People can argue about exactly whether it's growing at 3% or 4% or whatever, but the worker population ratio is on an uptrend. What this means is that the number of jobs created is faster. The rate of growth of creation of jobs is faster than the rate of growth of population. So when we are looking forward, right now we have to build on this. So there is no indication in this data that somehow employment is going down, jobs created is going down, but economy is going up. So one part of it is clearly that the economy, we've discussed 7%, etc., that it has to grow at that. The second critical part which analyzed, which again is relatively ignored, is a little a sentence I have. I say jobs and skills are two sides of the same coin. You know, people discuss employment as if it is out there and skills as something down here. No, skills and jobs are two sides of the same coin. So the analysis shows, again, I won't get into detail, I've done a detailed analysis which shows that casual labor real wages have increased the fastest from the same data, but the regular labor, the wage, salary labor, the real growth is negative. Why? Because the skills are not being improved, the skills are not being matched. You are not creating, there are these jobs here and we are not creating the skills which match these jobs. So the key issue for the future, in my view, is creating the right skills and matching them to the jobs. That is going to be critical both for real wage growth, for productivity and for overall growth.
So it's going to be a combination of things, but of course skilling is the most important aspect of policy development that one will have to focus on going forward. But you know, I want to also take you through some of the schemes that government has launched in the past 100 days since Modi government came back to power. The Union Cabinet, of course, approved the Ayushman Bharat for all senior citizens over 70 years of age. Can India really afford it, sir?
Well, you know, when we discuss old age, we look at two things. One is longevity, right? So the number of years a person lives from birth after he's born, you know, and the second thing we look at is the ratio of old people to the working age population. So starting, of course, with the first, we know as the economy progresses, the length of time people live is going to increase, you know, with the economy, with better food, health, all sort of things. So the key here is to make sure that health insurance, for example, you know, there's discussion on, you know that in the financial sector, we talk about startups, fintech. So we need to initiate a similar sort of revolution in health insurance. So clearly, as people live longer, they are going to need better health insurance, etc. The second part is the ratio of the working age, the old population to working age. Now, kind of preliminary projections suggest that that ratio for us is going to increase by 2050 to a level which is currently prevalent in the US. So you have to be watchful. Your question is valid in the sense that we must be careful about the kind of pension system we have, about the things we spend on. But I think making sure that the old people who cannot afford the insurance, who cannot afford to pay out of it, who don't have pensions, I think it's our obligation to make sure that they have some support of this kind.
Absolutely, that goes without saying. And before I let you go, Dr. Virwani, you know, it's Prime Minister Modi's birthday. It's also 100 days since Modi 3.0 came to power. What are the biggest, according to you, and the most significant policy launches since Modi 3.0 came to power? You know, we heard from the government today celebrating the first 100 days. What, according to you, are the schemes that the government really made strides on?
Well, now that you reminded me, I'll use your TV to wish happy birthday to the Honorable Prime Minister. Okay, so what about the schemes? You didn't mention any schemes.
Well, schemes such as Lakhpati Didi for one, which the government announced with a lot of fanfare in the budget also, and gave us a status update on today.
Yeah, good choice. In fact, I should have mentioned that when I said women's entrepreneurs, you picked a very key one. Again, being a macroeconomist, I link it to what we need to do in the future. I kind of link all your questions. So one of the, besides skilling, the other important issue is to bring more women into the labor force. So the labor force participation rate of men in India is comparable to anywhere else in the world, but the women's participation is very low. So clearly we have to do whatever we can with respect to skilling, jobs, etc. So I think again from that perspective, this entrepreneurship, this spirit of entrepreneurship, that's an excellent example which I forgot to mention. I'm glad you mentioned it. The Lakpati Didis, it's again a demonstration effect. It's, you remember what I said about physical, people will always say, okay, how many female jobs has this created? I think that's not the main story. The main story is the transformation in the mindset of those women, of those people in those villages who see these ladies doing these things, of the society. So I think in some of these major changes, you have to look both at the direct effect on employment, but also in this mindset change.
All right, Dr. Virwani, thank you very much, sir, for joining us on this very significant day. Thank you for taking time out and sharing your thoughts on some of the greatest policy developments, changes expected, and giving us a status check on the launched policies so far in the last 100 days of Modi government. We appreciate you taking time out. And with that, it's a wrap on the show. Thank you very much for watching.
Not quite lived up to their pre-tournament billing, delivering a series of less than convincing performances. With 2 draws and a solitary win.
Your son will be Messi. No studies, just football all day. Go, my son, go. Make my face shine through playing football.
Not only your face, but also the country's. I will conquer the world by playing football. Come, let's go to Germany!
World's largest football talent hunt, News 9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
Hey, careful, huh? My daddy got it from abroad. Hey, disaster! How will you pay for the loss now?
In stock market, you should take risk as per your capacity and knowledge. Trade in options very carefully.
Wow, Dikra! Absolutely perfect! Take risk with full understanding.
Samajh kar, invest kar.
PM Modi is the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine. His visit comes 2 years after around 17,000 Indian students were safely evacuated amidst the Russia-Ukraine war under his leadership. Watch Airlift, the story of how the evacuations unfolded, only on the News 9 Plus app.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.